Let's talk about how you expose your image correctly. Now you know everything about the three main settings to set your exposure, and I think it's also important to understand that the frame rate influences your exposure too. Your new goal from now on is to shoot only in the full manual mode on your camera and don't use any camera automatics anymore. This way you will learn it the fastest way until it becomes second nature to you. These changes to the value of the aperture, shutter speed and ISO are called light stops. As you see, if the aperture number increases, you get every full step one stop darker. The same for the shutter speed. 1/50th is one stop brighter than 1/100. It doubles every time. ISO is getting one stop brighter when the number gets doubled. With this list you can check what you must change to stay at the same exposure, but change for example the aperture for a creative reason. If you are interested in getting this cheat sheet for free, you can get it through the link down below. A short recap. The first thing you set is your frame rate, so you choose if you want to shoot at normal speed or with the possibility to slow it down in post. Second, you choose the shutter speed, which depends on the frame rate and it's usually fixed. You should not use it to set your exposure, as you learned this has some downside. Change it only for creative reasons. Lastly, you have your aperture and ISO, which you can use to expose your image. Of course, external lights can also get you more exposure if you haven't enough. When you master your lighting, you will achieve the next level in your filmmaking career. I can promise you this fact. But what is if you have too much light? Let me make an example. You shoot at 25 FPS at the 1/50th on the base ISO, for example 640. You want a little depth of field and the sun is bursting down. To get around this you can crank up your shutter, but we don't do that. That's not professional and only an option if you are too lazy to use an ND filter, you forgot it or broke it. Yes, an ND filter is exactly the same as Casey Neistat sunglasses. It blocks the light so you don't get blind. It's exactly the same as it is for the camera. You can use it to set your exposure. This way you can use your open aperture in very bright conditions. It exists different ones, fixed values to screw on your lens with different sizes or variable ND filters. That is what I recommend to you, so you can use only one single variable filter and don't have to bring 10 different filters with you. But make sure you don't get the cheapest ones, that can bring you some troubles and color shifts. Whereby cheap, buy twice, most of the time that's true. So buy the biggest one and adapt it with these adapter rings to your other lenses, so you have to buy only one. There exist bigger versions of it called matte boxes, where you can use different anti-filter glasses. That is mostly used with bigger cinema cameras. Some manufacturers also create variable matte boxes that requires less gear to bring with you. But the best and easiest way to use it is if your camera has a built-in anti-filter. First I thought it is not a significant feature. I could use a standard variable screw-on LED, but if you use the internal variable anti-filter from Sony once, you never want to miss it again. The internal variable ND can keep your exposure if you go from a dark to a bright place automatically. With the screw-on ND you can't achieve this. For that you have to change your aperture while the lighting is changing. Some guys use in such cases a variable shutter, but in my opinion that's not the right way to go. But now, how can you see that you exposed correctly? There are some different options. By the time you know your camera, you can eyeball it with your monitor, but there are some more accurate ways. A safe way to control your exposure is the histogram. If most of the waves are right, it means the picture is too overexposed. If most of the waves are left, it tells you that the image is underexposed. This histogram you will find in most of the modern cameras. What you also can find in most mirrorless or DSLR cameras is the light meter. That shows you values from -2 underexposed to +2 overexposed. 0 means you are right with your exposure. But hold on. If you shoot in a log color profile, you have to shoot it brighter. With Sony S-Log3 for example, you should get a value between +1.3 to +1.7 for a correct exposure. But this can be different from log to log profile. You can get this information from your camera manufacturer's website by Google Help Guide Basic Contrast and the name of the brand. If you use a standard picture profile, you will get the correct exposure when you go with 0. Every gamma curve, also called picture profile, has different clipping points. It's crucial that you know these beforehand. Now you see this picture. The camera tells me I have a correct exposure, but my main subject is too dark. You can't count on that what your camera is telling you. Your camera's exposure meter has a measuring zone. That is by default set to white. That means your camera will get all the information from the whole picture and gives an average value to you. The camera doesn't know if you want to expose for your subject or the bright sunlight. To fix that, change it in your settings. Set the exposure measuring zone from white to spot and put the spot on the place you want to expose for, so you will get the correct reading. Well, yes, not in every scenario you have the time to do this, therefore existing better ways to control if you have the right exposure. You can set zebras, which are also available on many mirrorless cameras. That means you can select the zebra value you want and everything that is exposed more than that will show up with zebras in your picture. That is helpful but can be distracting when you frame your shot and see everywhere zebras. Also here it's essential to set the zebra values correctly. 0 IRE means pure black and dark, 100 IRE means pure white and bright. IRE is the shortcut for the Institute of Radio Engineers. They set this standard at some point in the past. With the normal picture profile, everything around 100 is clipping, it's overexposed and you can't get it back. It will look purely white. With S-Log3 this happens around 90 to 94 IRE, and for example S-Log2 clips around 90 IRE. How you get the correct values to know where your exposure should be is by googling the manufacturer and search for help guide basic contrast. Now you can set the zebra to 94 for S-Log3 and you know right away where in the picture you have overexposed areas. When you use an external monitor, what I recommend, you will get even more tools to show your exposure, which most mirrorless cameras don't have built in. In some cinema cameras you will get some of these features built in. All these features like waveform, zebra, depending on the cam or the monitor itself, can be used with the LUT, also called lookup table applied or without. But pay attention to the clipping point. With the LUT it's near around 100 IRE and without in S-Log3 around 90 to 94 IRE. Also important is to know if the LUT influences the measurement tool or not. This can be changed in the settings of the camera or the monitor itself. The waveform is how I prefer to set the exposure, next to eyeball what I see on a good monitor. On the vertical axis it shows you the IRE exposure level, and on the horizontal axis you see the picture from left to right. This way you can easily see which part of the image is over or underexposed. The last is false color. Also this is a perfect tool to set your exposure that shows you the IRE levels with colors. 0 means underexposed and 100 means overexposed. Especially when you try to get an evenly lit situation, you will see it this way the best. Faces should be around 50 to 70 IRE, depending on the look you are going for. You can't cross your shadows if you don't care if you don't see some parts in the shadows. And try to avoid clipping the highlights when you notice orange or red. It's a possible sign that you have lost details in the highlights in your image. Especially when you have bright lights in your shot, which can happen, and it's okay when you go for this look. Otherwise you can expose for the bright lights so that they do not start to clip in the background and light your subject with the bounce or additional lights when you don't want to lose these highlights. The only downside of this false color is that you have to activate it and deactivate it if you want to see the original picture again. In the lighting chapter you learn also another method to set your exposure even more precise and how to get consistent results. But for now that are all tools you have to know to set your exposure correct. Also these IRE values are guidelines. That don't mean you can't light the face lower in a dark moody scene, but a face exposed at around 90 IRE is definitely too bright. It's up to you if you go for a high or a low key look. You choose how and what you want to expose and for which look you are going for. If this video helped you to get better images, don't forget to subscribe. But first go out and try it out. Now nothing stands in your way of getting a perfectly exposed shot. Let's create.